The document that is sitting on the table here is your initial proposal? Okay. Well, in that case, let's go through it. All right, on the preamble, I guess you all didn't do it in legislative format. So what changed from the current contract in the preamble?
I'm not sure if there's actually any changes in preamble from the old contract. So I don't have the old contract on hand, so I don't know. We pretty much started from scratch with most everything in here. So we copied some from the old contract, but a lot of it's new material.
Well, that kind of makes it hard to follow through and ask questions if you all don't identify what you've changed.
So you haven't been able to review this yet?
No, actually, so a copy came, I saw a copy this morning, and the copy this morning, that I saw this morning was like this, didn't have it. So somehow, because the thing is that I got a message, I guess the email said something about there being track changes in there. But somehow, you know, and I guess it going through somebody's firewall, it's stripped out all of the track changes. So I thought when I got here, you all might have
No.
a strike through copy of it.
Yeah, I don't think the track changes came through at all.
No, we didn't have a track changes came through because we started with a clean document.
Oh, okay, because I thought there was something in the email that I saw that said
Yeah,
something about
the track
track changes.
changes was just for moving forward. So, you know, moving forward from the initial document, we can track what's changed from this. But, you know, with new contract, we started with a clean document.
Well, I mean, it's not really a new contract. We have an existing contract. So, well, I mean, we just go through this, and if you tell me what it is that, if any of the changes that you recall, just let me know what the changes are.
I mean, I can't recall every single change. There's numerous. There's some are entire articles that are brand new, some we changed some wording. So, I mean, I don't know verbatim, word for word, what we changed here and there.
Well, how am I supposed to review and evaluate this stuff?
You know, I mean, how did we do it last time? We had a brand new contract then.
Because there was nothing that we had to talk about changing. I mean, the thing is that there's a difference between negotiating a brand new contract versus negotiating a change to the status quo contract. You know, so normally when you're negotiating changes to an existing contract, you identify the changes. I mean, even if you're going to do it a whole new article, you just strike out the old article and say this is a brand new article.
Well,
You know, but I'm assuming, and frankly, striking out an entire article and putting in a brand new article is much easier to evaluate than a situation where you've changed a couple of words here and there, because as everybody here that's been involved in negotiation knows, you can change the entire meaning of an entire article by just one word. And if you can't identify that one word, you know, I could go through this stuff and say, oh, it sounds, you know, it sounds pretty good, not realizing that one word has changed in the whole thing that changes the whole meaning and the whole way you're currently doing things.
okay, well, we don't have a straight through version from the old one. We were at, in the old negotiations, we were never even provided with a editable version. We were given PDFs and paper copies from the county. So we don't have any sort of Word document of the old contract.
Oh, you should have asked me. I mean, I would have gotten it to you. I don't negotiate that way. You know, Gary knows we've negotiated plenty of contracts before. I'm happy to send you over a Word version, you know, of the document. Now, look, here's the thing. I'm not going to dictate to you how you want to negotiate. I mean, that's totally up to you. I'm going to tell you that when you get proposals back from me, anything that's changed from the existing contract, not only is it going to be in legislative style, meaning it's going to be underlined and stricken through, you know, underlines we're adding, throughs we're taking out. I try to go ahead and highlight everything in yellow so that this way, you know, when you have an entire, you know, a 2-page article and I'm changing one word, sometimes it's really hard to look through and identify that there's an underline in one word or a strike through, so I try to do it in yellow. so that this way you can see what it is, and we can then have a discussion on it. If this is how you want to give us your proposals, that's fine, but just understand, it's going to add a lot of time to this, because we're going to have to go back and kind of compare word for word in figuring it out. And there are going to be some questions that I'm not going to be able to ask you here today, because I don't realize that there's a change. Because normally, here's what I normally do, and I would expect that you're going to do the same thing as we go through these negotiations. When you propose a change, I'm going to ask you why. What's wrong with the existing language? What's wrong with the status quo? What are you trying to change? Why are you trying to change it? And what are you trying to accomplish to determine whether or not the language you're proposing is the best way of handling something? Because there's always, in many cases, there are different ways to address the same problem. And maybe we don't agree with the way that you've proposed it, but maybe there's a way that we can counter-propose it that gets to what you're trying to accomplish, but in a manner that doesn't, cause us heartache. And so those are the kind of questions, I will be asking of you, and I would expect that you're going to ask the same thing. When we come back and we say, hey, we want to change it to reflect this, you're going to say, why? And so without knowing all of the changes, there are going to be some things I'm not going to be able to ask you about here today. So what's going to end up happening is that's going to have to get deferred till the next time we meet. But that's, again, if you're okay with that, then, you can give the proposals this way, but I'm going to tell you right now, it's not going to be an efficient way of negotiating this contract.
No, we're not looking to do that going forward. That's why we provided you with a Word document. But for our proposal, we start over with a complete rewrite. So it wasn't anything changed on the old document. It was a complete rewrite.
So does that mean there's nothing in the existing contract that you like?
No, that's not true. But we went in with a clean document.
So let's try to be as productive as possible. And so I'm going to go through and ask you some questions about this stuff. If you're able to answer it, great. And if you can't answer it, then we'll obviously do a compare and contrast with the existing contract, and we may very well then come back with changes. With questions when we meet again. So we covered the preamble. Recognition, was there something in particular that you're trying to do different on the recognition than the current contract?
A couple things. The old definition of positions from the old contract did not, it was based on how the division was set up 3 years ago. Since then, ranks have been added and removed. In 1.1, we just listed everything that is currently covered under the union and not covered under the union, based on their position titles in HR's document. Previously, there were some special assignment positions like training captain and district captains that have since been merged into beach captain. So that kind of clarifies that. And then 1.2 is a group section, which we believe would unify the position titles to match what the county has in other divisions and in other both law enforcement and lifeguard agencies. Essentially, 1.2 is just renaming the position titles officially. These position titles, most of them are more or less called that informally. My uniform says officer, but my official title says senior lifeguard. Whereas throughout the state of Florida, senior lifeguard is a full-time, non-law enforcement lifeguard EMT. So that's a pretty standard title throughout Florida, which we call beach safety specialist. When the beach safety specialist position was created in 2001, the initial intention was to rename the other ranks to match that style. Since then, they've done that with the command staff positions like beach captain, but they haven't done that with the other positions, from beach officer and beach sergeant.
Got it. I understand that. Did anybody on our side have any questions regarding that? Okay, pretty self-explanatory. Do you know if there were any changes in Article 2?
To my knowledge now, it should be verbatim.
Well, kind of. So Article severability was previously in Article 3.
We may have
But
rearranged the articles.
it does appear to be relatively verbatim, I believe. Yep.
Actually, I guess there's a little bit of this. Actually, I guess the preamble, there is a change.
The old contract didn't have a preamble?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So the old contract, the preamble ended after the first sentence. So why are you proposing to add in the rest of that?
Because I think it's a good introduction. We think it's a good introduction to sum up the purpose of the agreement. The preamble isn't so much laying out terms, that's why it's a preamble, but it's introducing the purpose of a contract, of this document.
So does that mean for like the last 3 years, there was no purpose to this document?
I mean, we tried to have a preamble in the past, and it was left to, this is an agreement. That's,
Yeah, I guess
in the
I'm-
past is this is an agreement.
Look, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm always suspicious as to the reason why folks ask to add language to a contract. It's not you, it's not personal, it's not this union. Is that anytime I'm at the bargaining table and somebody proposes adding something to the contract, people don't add it to the contract without there being a purpose and intent behind it. You know, and usually when I see language like this, you know, harmonious working relations, it's so that you can file grievances, go to arbitration saying the county's not being harmonious. And so that's why I look with suspicion at this. But-
Okay, I mean, I don't foresee that happening, but harmony's a two-way street, that sort of thing. So I don't foresee harmony being a arbitration matter.
Well, and I also don't see harmony as being something that you dictate through language in the contract. I mean, you have harmonious relations because you get along. And if we're not getting along, no amount of language in the contract saying we're required to get along is going to change that. It's a practical matter. But, okay, I mean, I understand where you're coming from on it. There's really no sense in, you know, spending a lot of time debating this. So let's go to the recognition. I guess you said that. That's 1.2 is new. I'm just kind of curious, is there some reason why you moved work stoppages from 2 to 4?
I think the purpose was just to move a lot of boilerplate stuff up front. Just from an organizational standpoint, it doesn't really change the meaning to move it. It was just from an organizational, laying out the table of contents sort of by content.
So where's I don't have a table of contents, or do I?
I
Yeah,
don't think the original one had a table of contents.
Yeah, actually it does. I mean, it has a, table of contents.
Oh, okay.
So Article 3 is brand new?
Yes.
I understand. All right, work stoppages. Do you recall there being any changes to the language?
No, I don't recall there being any changes. I mean, it's pretty much cut and dry from what the law says.
Got it, but is it the same as what's in the existing contract?
Yeah, I don't remember having any changes. I think we more or less copied it over.
It looks like the only change is going to be that in the new contract proposal, it clarifies the previously requested changes in titles. In 4.2.
Oh, where you say, where it says sergeants, officers.
Yes, sir.
Got it, thank you.
So in 1.2, we had defined those positions as being the same as the existing ranks. Just so that, and you'll see the term sergeants, officers, and senior lifeguards throughout this, and collectively as employees.
Are there any changes to union business?
5.2, originally we had one person attending the county council meeting. We upped that to 6 stewards attending the county council meeting for the final action. 5.1, we clarified, I think we defined stewards in here. I don't think they were officially defined in the old contract. It just said representatives. So we define them as stewards. Otherwise, designating 6 people and what their duties are, I don't believe has changed from the old contracts.
So under 5.2, then 6 people that are on duty will come off the beach and
Just like we are now.
6 of them?
Well, we're missing one. We do have one on bereavement leave right now.
Well, under the current language, it's 1 employee.
Yes, we would like to increase that to 6. We
Right
think
now.
that our whole executive board should be there, we work together, so it's not just one of us.
And so who's going to cover for you, for the 6 people when you're over here on duty?
Same people who would cover us for us now, administrative personnel, command staff, we're covered right now, so.
Well, it's not 1. I mean, you're adding 5 people, additional people on.
Yeah, but I'm saying that we're covered today, right here, right now. So we're covered now, so it's clearly not an issue.
So you all are on duty right now?
Yes.
All right. Bulletin boards, were any changes there?
I don't believe so. I believe it's the same thing. I think the only thing, I might have added the word steward in there, since we haven't added that definition, or defined term.
Individual rights, it looks like I guess something was added.
So a couple changes that I do recall in 7.2, we did sort of clarify the language. It covers the same stuff that individual rights have previously mentioned with regards to the union being given opportunity. So just to clarify, a written notification of the meeting to be present in grievance meetings. We also added that grievances settled without the approval of the union. This is something other unions have as well, and there's any settlement without the approval of the union is fine, but it can't be used as precedent for other stuff. And then 7.3 is a new section is related to the arbitration article, or the arbitration sections, further on in the grievances article.
Got it. So 7.3 is Galbraith. Management rights, there any change there?
I think that's pretty much the same article as before. I think the one language we did put on there was in the old agreement, at the bottom of 8.1, except for providing this agreement. You know, because there are things in this agreement that talk about schedules and discipline, those would be exceptions to the management rights.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to sit here and read every word through, but I'm just kind of eyeballing it. I see differences jumping out at me, so we'll take a look at that. Dues check off in the old contract. Where do you move dues check off to? 11. Okay, let's go through. Actually, we'll just go through the way discipline. This looks like entirely new.
Entirely new, written from scratch.
Okay, so we're under your proposal, you incorporate the progressive discipline in the merit rules and regulations. Under your proposal, would any of the other merit rules regarding discipline apply, or just the ones regarding progressive discipline?
What do you mean?
I mean, the thing is that there's, don't know the merit rules by heart, but I know there's an entire section that talks about discipline.
So that was the intent, is not to replace merit rules. 9.1 says we'll use merit rules as it's currently written, but not amendments thereto. So amendments to merit rules would be subject to additional negotiation.
So currently, your discipline is controlled by the merit rules. And so I guess the question then is that with respect to what you're doing in Article 9 and elsewhere in the contract, is it basically you're going to still be under the merit rules except for those places where it's modified through this contract?
Yes.
Or is this going to control everything with respect to merit rules, with respect to discipline?
No, we're still on the merit rules.
And here's the thing, the only reason I'm posing the question that way is because with respect to the merit rules, the only thing you're saying is that the progressive discipline under the merit rules will apply. You know, which kind of leads me to believe that maybe that's the only thing you're trying to incorporate from the merit rules and everything else would be.
No, you'll see that I mentioned a couple other sections, and then at the end of the agreements, I think there's a catch-all that says if it's not covered by this agreement, it's covered by merit rules.
Okay. So under 9.3, are you currently using EPMs in determining promotions and the like?
They have been used intermittently, they're not always used, but they are sometimes used. And there is really zero regulation on when they're used or not used. We feel that since EPMs are not disciplinary, that they shouldn't be treated as a mark against someone. It's a documentation thing. Whereas disciplinary actions, by all means, consider that.
All right, 9.5, you're expanding the law enforcement officer bill of rights to the lifeguards.
Yes.
Got it. I assume the GPS is on your vehicles?
Yes, there's GPSs attached to the computers, and there's also GPSs that are mounted in the dash, away from any users.
So if somebody's looking for you and they can't find you, and they then kind of pull up the GPS to see where you're at, and you're on the other side of the county for no valid business reason, are you saying that the county can't discipline you under those circumstances?
No, I mean, you could start an investigation into that and question the employee, pull up surveillance video, talk to other witnesses, but it's saying that you can't just discipline based on.
I guess, why not, in a situation where the GPS clearly shows that you're on the other side of the county? And
Because a GPS is a tool, but it's not an infallible tool. I mean, there have been cases where our trucks are showing 10 miles offshore or going 100 miles an hour through the water when they clearly aren't, because these devices cannot function. And so we're saying, it's not that you can't use it as evidence, but you can't base it solely on that. You know, have other evidence too. I cannot write a ticket solely based on what my radar says. I have to visually estimate the speed and hear a clear audio Doppler tone and test that device before and after my shift. So electronic devices are fallible, and so there should be backup information to substantiate what the GPS is saying.
we can put it here, we won't discipline you solely on radar.
And just as a side note, I have a picture, I wish it was in my old phone,
Yeah.
that has me sitting squarely in the middle of the inlet, like in the channel, in my truck. So I took a picture of it, like, look, I'm in the channel, click. I wasn't. But that's kind of it, it's like, you
Got
know,
it.
we just looked at that solely, said, why did we just drive a truck into the middle of Los Angeles?
All right, I understand that. All right, I got it. I assume Article 10 is a rewrite? New, entirely?
Yes, the old Article 10 just said revert miracles.
So where'd you get this one from?
So this is more or less from the contract that IAP has with the CAMS employees, and that I believe the fire department and sheriff's office also have almost identical language to this. More or less, 1.1 just says, you know, use grievances based on merit roles, and then the bulk of this gets into beyond grievances, getting arbitration.
I've seen this before, or at least I've seen parts of it. All right, and 11's dues checked off. Is there any change from
I don't
the?
think so.
Any changes on hours of work and overtime? Oh, wow, yes.
12.1 is the only thing that I think is remotely close to it. Been changed, so.
So tell me what it is that you're doing here.
So in 12.2, we're looking for 12-hour shifts for all operations employees. It's pretty consistent with other police and EMS agencies, both in this county and throughout the country, really. Administration employees, such as your front desk, your investigator, et cetera, they're still subject to whatever best works for the assignment they're given.
Yeah, I think you had mentioned that last time that we met. Okay, what else are we doing here?
So 12.3 and 4, basically it sets aside, you need a sergeant and 2 officers as your bare minimum. That's what you need in every district. Beyond that, the county can put people where they need to be filled based on the operations. You know, maybe one day you need that officer to work some different area. And 12.4 also says that the 12-hour shifts apply to your normal working hours, but in terms of extra shifts, you know, you need a 5.5 guy in here for 5.5 hours to cover something, then you can schedule whatever you need for overtime.
All right, 12.5, I get that.
I apologize, partway through 12.5, breaks into 12.6.
12.6,
That's a typo. So the 12.6 is just saying, if mandatory training should be paid, voluntary training is at the discretion of the county, except that high liability activities should be paid due to the nature of the liability. We believe they should be on the clock for that. And the county has typically done that. A lot of times, voluntary training classes, they're in the classroom, are on your own time, whereas if you're out of the range shooting guns, the county's typically paid the employees for that.
When you say voluntary training, is this voluntary training that is sponsored by the department?
Yes, yeah, so Daytona State College offers training primarily for law enforcement officers, but also there's EMS training out there. And it goes through a training approval process. The training may or may not have a cost to the agency, and the agency has typically decided if it's a voluntary training, whether or not it's going on the clock, you're paid to go, or hey, you can go on your day off and you're not getting paid, but we'll pay for the class.
Right, but the thing is there's like a zillion EMS-related programs out there. And so under your language, does this mean that if you decide that, you know, there's some former firefighter, paramedic out there that's put together a 1-week training program, and you decide you want to go to it, under this language, does that mean that the county has to pay for it?
That would still have to go through the training approval process that we all have to go through. If that needs to be spelled out in there under voluntary training, we can certainly do that. But we have a a formal training approval process, and we don't even consider training that doesn't go through that process. I can't just call up DSC and schedule myself for a class. They won't even talk to me.
All right, I mean, that makes a little more sense to me. I mean, the thing is it's not obvious from reading the language. It's,
Yes, I believe it's
hey,
it's outlined in our policies.
look, you know what? The thing is that sadly, all of these things that seem odd to you as far as like, why would I ever read the language that way is because I've gone to arbitration over something very similar. It's crazy, you know, because here's what ends up happening is that we sit down at the bargaining table, we go through this stuff. We all understand the reason why we're saying what we say in here. But then this thing goes out to the troops. And, you know, 2 or 3 years down the road, you know, somebody picks it up and says, oh, hey, guess what? It says in here I get paid for voluntary training. I'm going to go to voluntary training. And there's a possibility none of us here are still in the positions we're in, or none of us really even remember what the discussion was on this. And next thing we know, we're arbitration over something that none of us ever contemplated at the bargaining table. And so, you know, that's why I'm going to tell you, there are times where, you know, I'm going to ask these questions and raise these issues, and it's going to seem like, man, this guy's just nitpicking the hell out of this. It's not, because at the end of the day, it doesn't help either party to spend a lot of time in arbitration. So that's what I'm trying to avoid. So I appreciate your explanation on that. So I get that. Let's see, 12.7.
So we understand you don't get paid for your daily commute, but it did just want to make explicit, because later on in this agreement we talked about an assigned vehicle program. We wanted to make it explicit that when you're operating your county vehicle to and from work, that you're covered under county insurance.
No. Well, the reason why you can't get paid, you don't get paid for operating a county vehicle from home or to work is because there's a Florida statute that specifically says you can't get paid for doing that. And that's the reason. So, all right, I understand.
12.8, we have something similar to this in policy. The current policy is for a 2-hour minimum. We would like to up that to 3. I can't remember if the sheriff's office has 3. I want to say they do, but 3 has become the industry standard, just because the amount of time it takes to prepare for something even as simple as a court appearance on your day off, which may only be half an hour, but the impact to you in your day has been significantly greater. So our current policy has been 2 hours. We actually do have a 3-hour policy for contracted details, such as officers working at the ocean deck. So we just like that 3 across the board.
So when you say except that no hours of work shall overlap, what's that?
The intent is, so if I'm scheduled for court at 7 and my shift starts at 7:30, well, I'm only going to get the 30 minutes of pay. I'm not going to get 2 hours. I'm not going to overlap and get double paid. So the 3-hour minimum is doesn't overlap time with any existing shift. And that's been something we've already been doing in the past.
12.9 mutual swaps.
And we already do this, but in researching other union contracts, they have tended to put a shift swap section in, so we wanted to enumerate the contract.
12.10, is that current or is that something new?
That is new. I can't remember if I got that from Sheriff's Office or EVAC. But essentially, it's to say our schedule has a degree of built-in overtime on the long week of 48 hours.
Right.
And so we believe that if you are taking a vacation, you shouldn't lose pay on your vacation time for that being paid as 48 hours of straight time. It should be paid as 40 hours of straight time and 8 hours of overtime.
So if you take vacation for your entire shift, for your entire 2-week period, you should get overtime?
You should get paid what you would normally get paid for working that 2 weeks. Yeah, you shouldn't lose pay for taking vacation.
One of the other reasons that we constructed the article is based around employees calling out sick, which we've seen issues with COVID-19, as well as before that, where, let's say I pick up, we've got a holiday weekend coming up, so the pay week starts on Saturday. Let's say I sign up for overtime on Saturday and Sunday, and then I work a holiday on Monday, and now I've got 2 12-hour shifts of overtime plus the double holiday, the double pay for that holiday. And then let's say come the following Wednesday, when I would return, the following Friday, when I would return to work my normal shift, I wake up and I don't feel so hot. Well, instead of saying, I don't feel so hot, I should probably do the right thing. It puts the employee in a position where they have to mount the idea of losing right now, which is what we do, that, potential 12 hours worth of overtime, or in this case, it would probably be the double pay for the holiday, because scheduling will place that day of leave and cover for the holiday. So we're essentially losing money on time that we've already worked because we got sick, something that we have no control whatsoever over.
And that specific example is also covered more in 14.3 later on.
It's new, Jeff, so we have to cost it.
Yeah, no problem.
But when you say personal leave, that's scheduled or unscheduled, right?
For
Personal leave, vacation,
12.10.
personal leave, sick, 1210.
For 12.10, it would be scheduled because that would be at least 14 days in advance. Which also incentivizes, is good for the county because that incentivizes employees to get their requests out early.
Explain 12.11.
So we have mandatory overtime.
Right.
Where an employee may be put in the day off to cover the shift.
Sure.
And we've been doing this, although it's not, I don't know that it's actually listed anywhere in policy, but it's been our standard practice that if there's a sergeant vacancy, you can upfill it with an officer if need be, but you wouldn't call an officer in on their day off to work that. Just like if there's an officer vacancy, you wouldn't call a beach safety specialist in on their day off. So you would mandate an officer for that. So the idea is if you've got a sergeant vacancy, you mandate sergeants. If you've got an officer vacancy, you mandate officers if you need the mandate. It still allows for voluntary either upfilling, or there have been times where we say, hey, we've got a supervisor spot open up, we will allow a field training officer to voluntarily work overtime. But although it's on a voluntary basis, it's to say you can't be mandated outside of your rank.
Okay. I get it.
1212 is straight out of IAP's latest contract. And that's just to give folks, hey, you're brand new, you just got out of training, give you a little bit of breathing room to get your bearings before you're thrown to the wolves. 1213 is also straight out of EVAC's contract.
That seems like you really like the VEX contract.
We've got some good stuff.
I assume you didn't take the bad stuff, right? All right, let's see, 1214.
So this clarifies the requirement, what qualifies someone for mandatory overtime. Because there have been some perceived issues where current and former employees who are going through training may have delayed getting their certificates in order to avoid mandatory overtime. They've delayed it until after the busy season, then they get their certificate and they dodge the overtime for the summer. Whether or not they've actually done it, I haven't personally asked these, but there have been a pretty strong perception of that, especially based on looking at the mandatory overtime lists, that say an officer who doesn't have their EMT cert isn't getting mandated when they've been working that position without an EMT cert for months. And it's to say, you don't necessarily have to have that to be exempt from mandates, because we already work them in that capacity anyways. With the exception there at 1214, it's not to say that you should be mandating a non-law enforcement officer for your minimum staffing levels. Your minimum staffing should be qualified for what you need. But beyond that, if you need mandatory overtime, you can pull people without that. And the way our current system is set up, intentionally or unintentionally, is it looks at the full qualifications of the rank, which if it's an officer position, says they have to be an LEO and an EMT. And so if they are missing one of those, they're not even on the mandate list, potentially for a year or more.
If for their own, we're talking about for their own position.
Yes. Because we hire people, you need 3 certificates for this job. We hire people with sometimes 0, sometimes 1 or 2 of their full certificates, which is fine, and we can train people up, but.
Got it. So I would assume that this is primarily a position, an issue in the senior lifeguard, and what would be the senior lifeguard in the officer position?
Yes. Which is currently called the senior lifeguard and beach safety specialist.
Right. I understand. Is 13 new?
13 is all new, modified from the sheriff's office contract. So 13.1 would, and this is specifically for actual position vacancies, as well as vacancies or openings which last longer than 18 days, such as someone on extended leave due to FMLA or injury or whatnot.
So does that say that in here somewhere, that it defines what this is? What this applies
I
to?
think 13.2 or 13.4.
Oh, 14.
Extends that as
Got it.
well. But we do sometimes upfill officers to sergeant. Currently, we do that just as a matter of practice, not by policy. We do that with field training officers. This borrows the procedure from the sheriff's office, which says if you've got a current eligibility list, these are people who want the job anyways. You can get that list from HR and pick using the rule of 5, someone to fill that spot.
I understand. All right, Article 14, leave. Anything different than this one?
Yes, it's all new. 14.1 is an original idea from one of our members that you don't always get the opportunity to take full vacations. certainly this year has not been conducive to a lot of travel taking. But at a certain point in your career here at the county, you can actually accrue hours faster than you can even spend them on your merit rolls, and even exceed your maximum cash out at the end of your career and leave hours on the table. So we would like just 40 hours. You let the county know sometime in October how many hours you want to cash out. That's deducted from your PL balance, and you'd receive that as a bonus check in November. Give people a little extra spending money for Christmas gifts.
So do you have any idea how much it would cost us if we put this in place?
I mean, max, if every single employee cashed out 40 hours every year, a ballpark number of 50,000?
All right, I mean, we can look at it as wondering if you all have already costed it out.
No, because I mean, the cost factor would depend heavily on the wages article as well. It's in Article 15, so. And not everyone's going to want to do that. You know, new employees, they may say, hey, I need to get my balance up. I need to get more hours just in case something happens. So they're not going to want to cash out. You get some older employees that are going to say, yeah, I want to cash out. So if you take a lot of vacations, you may say, well, I used up a bunch of PL this year. I need to save it. So it's hard to really say.
And it's something that's been done at the discretion of the county in the past. It's been several years since they offered that as an option, but it was either 2 or 3 years in a row. It was given to us up to, I want to say 80 hours. Sometime in November, late November. It's something that's been done before.
Yeah, no, I know that the county has done it on kind of what I'll refer to as an ad hoc basis. You know, for that year, the council says we're going to do this. All right. 14.2.
14.2 is an idea courtesy of Lee here.
From the great boss.
Essentially, I mean, we already give vacation time for your birthday. It's generally pretty well approved. This would, just to say, rather than counting it as personally, it would be similar to how the county does holiday time. You can take your birthday off, and it doesn't come out of your personal leave.
Well, I have to be honest on this one. Somebody sent me the initial, your all's initial draft on this one that Lee put together. And that was the one that had the county will do a birthday party at Chuck E. Cheese for you.
No?
I mean,
Lee's looking at me like, what are you talking about?
birthday party.
I don't know if I'm going to spend Jesus. Okay.
All right, let's see, 14. An employee notifies the county that they are suddenly unable to work.
This is what we were talking about before. You request your overtime, and then you suddenly get sick. We've had it plenty in the past where someone says, hey, I'm sick or I'm hurt, but I don't want to call out because then I lose my overtime. Now they're coming in, they're either worsening their injury or they're spreading their illness throughout the agency. That's not right. So
Basically, this is 14.3 is unscheduled personal.
When I was talking before, I forgot that this was further explained later in the contract, but, you know, a specific example, recently we had an employee who was mandated to work on a weekend day off. And then at noon on Monday on his regularly scheduled shift, after he'd already worked a 12-hour mandatory overtime shift, he was sent home by the Department of Health and lost essentially the 12 hours of overtime that he had worked because it was replaced. That was transitioned into the week to avoid taking personal leave from the day. That's something that it's occurred enough that we could give a bunch of examples of it where, employees, like I said before, they accrue all this time early in the week, and then come the end of the week, there's a death in the family, or they get sick, or they get sent home, or whatever the case is. This would just ensure that, that employees are able to comfortably do the right thing without fear of losing, potentially substantial amounts of money they've already worked for.
So if we do this, then how do we avoid the situation where somebody's mandated to work extra hours during the week and they decide they're going to take a vacation day by calling it sick?
Well,
right before their shift.
If you suspect fraud, the county already has an existing system under merit rules where you can require a doctor's note of documentation. So if you suspect that an employee is misusing this, then you can address it. And there's already a framework in place to do that.
Or if that person's inconsistent, we can look into it.
Yeah, if there's a pattern, and we've done that in the past, where we said, hey, you always call in sick on a Wednesday, Thursday, and that gives you 7 days off. We don't think you're sick.
All right, 14.4, I understand that one. Is it 14.4 something new?
14.4, we have, so it's gone back and forth. I believe current policy says 180 days. Fluctuating plane ticket prices, sometimes it's beneficial to ask out way in advance, especially if you're making late plans. You might be planning something a year or more out in advance. And this is just to say an employee can ask how far in advance. It doesn't guarantee that the county is going to approve or deny it, but we believe it's not fruitful to set a time limit on when you can send an email asking. The request is there, and if you need to sit, it can sit, or if you can look at it, you can look at it. At one point, a previous deputy chief actually changed that down to 90 days. So you can only ask for vacation out 90 days out. And now it's subsequently changed back to 180 days.
Understood. All right, wages. Do you want to wait?
Yeah, wait. Okay, hold on.
Okay. All right, I assume that the mins and maxes have been increased
Yes.
by any uniform amount?
No, uniform, actually, it's just sort of an inverse amount. The senior lifeguard rank has the largest increase, the sergeant rank has the least increase, but it does put it at a more level amount. I would believe the 17.5 senior lifeguard, that's pretty consistent for what a full-time lifeguard EMT makes throughout the state of Florida for a full-time position, not law enforcement. You look just down I-4, you got Amazon hiring unskilled workers in a warehouse for $15 an hour, and $19 an hour to drive a truck. So the wages in the area are going up. Adding on $4 an hour to that is the officer pay, and an additional $4 an hour to that is the sergeant's pay.
So when you say 1750 is the going rate in Florida for lifeguards, are there specific jurisdictions that you're looking at?
I know anywhere over in the Tampa Bay area that has lifeguards, that has full-time EMT lifeguards, up and down the East Coast. It's pretty consistent that you're right somewhere in the $16 to $19 range of.
Right. So I assume you're looking at like Brevard and Flagler.
Flagler only has one. They got one guy who manages 25 part-time lifeguards, and they sit within a stone's throw of Peter, so they're not really a fair comparison. Flagler doesn't really do what we do. But agencies that have a more established beach safety agency.
Is there an agency out there that you view yourself most like, as far as size and?
No, actually, we cannot compare adequately because we make more rescues in our one little county than the entire rest of the state of Florida combined. So no, it's when we compare ourselves in terms of what our agency does, the only comparisons are in California, not in Florida.
All right, let's see.
So 15.1 sets up the minimum and maximum. 15.2 establishes that for the following 2 fiscal years, the minimum and maximum pay would increase by 2% as a cost of living increase. We looked at inflation over the last 20 years, it's averaged out to 2.2%. So that 15.2 just covers raising your minimums so that you're paying people the same amount just to keep up with inflation. And then 15.3 gets into a step rate formula. The summary of it is you take the difference of the minimum and maximum and you multiply it by 3% for their years of service in their current rank and 2% for their years of service in previous full-time ranks within the division. The 3% number was chosen because that's the same as a high-risk multiplier for the Florida retirement system, so that when your retirement is maxed out, your pay should also be maxed out. It's fair because then that's the end of your career. That's assuming you stay in the same rank. Obviously, going through promotions, you're losing a percent for those. But we also believe that an employee should, when they're changing ranks to one of a higher pay, they should receive credit for their time in that. Because if you promote someone and then they just get the minimum or they get a 5% off of whatever they were before, then that's not recognizing the years, sometimes decades of service that they've had on the beach with applicable skills and experience. So it's not the same as being in that rank, but it does count for something. The end of 15.3, an example is provided just to help the math make more sense. Or maybe it confuses it, but an example is there.
What is the 40 minus 25.5?
Difference of minimum and maximum you're looking at the last line, 40 minus 25.5, max pay for that rank is 40, minimum pay is 25.5, so the difference between minimum and max, and minimum pay and maximum pay is 1450, and then 35% of 1450 is 5.075. Add that on to the minimum pay of 2550, and you get 3057.5.
So everybody would be starting at the midpoint of the range?
No, you don't start at the midpoint. You start off, you're brand new with the county, you start off at your minimum, but then you get credit for your years of service.
But I guess
That midpoint of the range, that is for a sergeant who's worked 5 years as a sergeant, 5 years as an officer, 5 years as a senior lifeguard. So you're talking about a 15-year employee, they're in the midpoint of their career, and so they're going to get middle pay.
So instead of doing 5, 5, and 5, it's, well, how many years do you have to have? So let's say it's 5 as a senior lifeguard, 5 as a officer, and 1 year as a sergeant.
Then you get 10 years for previous rank plus 1 year for sergeant. So you get 23% of the minimum and maximum difference instead of 35%.
So, but all of the salaries then are keyed off the midpoint.
No, they're not teed off the midpoint, they're teed off the minimum point. You can go up from the minimum.
So it would be off of the minimum, they get.
The idea is
Some
you
doesn't
start
make
off
sense
your
here.
career at the minimum pay, and you should end your career at the maximum pay.
Well, not if we keep moving up the maxes. I mean, that would make sense if we had a static max. But if we keep moving the max every time we negotiate the contract,
Correct.
You-
Yeah, you increase your minimum and maximum just to, so that these numbers reflect inflation. So that these numbers are in real value, the same numbers 30 years down the road, because 1750 in 30 years is not going to be worth 1750. You won't be able to buy the same amount of loaves of bread or fill up the same amount of gallons of gas with 1750 in 30 years.
I haven't put pen and paper on anything, but I can guarantee your pay increase is well in excess of inflation.
We're getting 3% right now. I think this would amount, rough estimate, to about a 3.5% per year.
Yeah, and what's the CPI for South 1.3?
Like I said, over the last 20 years, because it does go up and down, over the last 20 years, it's averaged 2.2%. And you shouldn't just go up with inflation for your whole career because you're not a starting brand new employee your whole year. You should be rewarded for a career of service and increase in value as your value to the county increases with that experience.
Yeah, that's it. That's always a debate, you know, is somebody in the position 15 years, you know, 2 or 3% better than the person that's there 14 years? Well, it depends on the person. But, you know, that's really not a debate to have right now. I'm just trying to figure out the methodology because I'm still getting thrown by the 40 minus 25.5 equals 14.5. It seems like anytime we're looking at a sergeant and what the sergeant's pay is going to be, we're going to be basing it off of the 14.5 up.
Yeah, it's a percentage of the difference between minimum and maximum pay.
Right, so we're keying the pay off of the midpoint.
I mean, if you'd like to call it that, but that's not what it's keyed off of.
Then am I the only one that's not understanding? I mean, I'm not the one that has to cost it out. You all have to cost it out, but I'm not understanding. Yeah, I'm not trying to give you a hard time. I'm just trying to
Is it 4 years for an officer?
figure this out for purposes of costing it out.
So,
Do you get it?
No, I'm with you. Because the difference between the high and the low is the mid.
No, the difference between the high, you would be talking about the average of the high and the low. This is the difference of the high and the low. The average of the difference would be different.
Well, how do you figure
This is
it?
the midpoint.
How do you figure it?
Now, a midpoint would be like 30 and change, $32 and change. This is the minimum and maximum have a difference of $14.50.
Okay, you're using the spread.
You could set the minimum paid minimum wage, the difference would still be $14.50. It's not a midpoint, it's the difference between the minimum and maximum, as opposed to the midpoint, which is the average of the minimum and maximum.
So, okay, so let's do it this way. I get hired in as a beach specialist. I'm a beach specialist 2 years. What would my pay be under your proposal?
6% above the minimum. 6% of the min-max difference above the minimum.
What's
So another-
what's the difference in numbers? I guess
Another way to think about it is if you think of your career as a journey and you start at the minimum and the destination is the maximum, you're 6% of the way there.
So am I 6% over the minimum, or am I 6% based off of?
It's 6% of the difference between minimum and maximum, which is not the same as 6% on top of the minimum, because that would be a different number.
Right, so the thing is that under your proposal, how much above the minimum would I be at 2 years?
That varies based on the difference between
Right.
minimum and maximum.
But is it?
Because the difference.
Well, no, I'm asking under your proposal. No, under your
It's not based
proposal.
on the minimum value.
No, under your proposal. I mean, if we were to use your lifeguard, I guess your senior lifeguard, which is a beach patrol specialist, under your proposal as it's drafted, if I'm a 2-year beach patrol specialist, how much would I make under your proposal?
Whatever, let's see,
If it's 6%, is that what you're saying?
But it's a 6% of the difference between the min and max, not 6% off of the min.
1810 an hour.
So basically, you're 60 cents.
60 cents more an hour.
Okay.
and that's assuming you've got 2 years of experience as of.
Right.
It comes out, not 2 years from now, we could have an additional 2% per year.
No, I get that. Yeah, now I'm just trying to kind of see if I'm calculating this correctly. So then, 0.6 divided by. So is that right? That would put you 3.4% into the range? If I'm doing the calculation right, that puts you 3.4% into the range.
3.4% above minimum, you said?
Yeah.
That sounds about right, because the difference between minimum and max is $10 and the minimum is $17.50. So,
Well, I was going off of the calculation that it was 1810.
yes, so your difference above minimum is not going to be the same number as the percentage of the difference between minimum and maximum. Because the percentage of the difference between minimum and maximum for a senior lifeguard is a $10 difference, and so it's 6% of $10, not 6% of $17.50.
Got it. So, all right, so that's if I was at 2 years. So let's just do this so I can see if I got this right then. So the same scenario, but instead of 2 years, so 2 years I'm at 1810, what would I be if I was at 3 years under your proposal?
1840. Senior lifeguard is easy, you can just add 30 cents a year,
Okay.
assuming you just stay at that. It's easy because the difference between the two is only $10. The other ones
Right.
are, I think the other one is $12.25 and $14.50.
I think I've asked enough questions. Do you all have questions as far as how to cost this thing out? All righty. 15.4 is pretty self-explanatory, as is.
Currently set by policy, it's not in a contract. It's currently set by policy at $1 an hour. And so we're just increasing that 3 years later. So we're increasing that out. 15.5, also increasing that out. It's, I believe policy currently says $2 an hour, so same increase. That's just during the time that they're performing those duties. 15.6, based on Article 12, which prescribes 12-hour shifts to operations branch employees. We understand that administration branch employees are typically going to be on some sort of 40-hour pay week, be it 5 8-hour shifts or 4 10-hour shifts. And so with that comes an 8% pay cut for going to operations branch. And we've actually seen in the past where people may not want to take those administration positions. We've had difficulty getting people for them because people understand that it would be a pay cut. And this is consistent with many other agencies that have salary incentive for like detectives programs. That's one of our administration branches, our investigation officer. So this would just give them a salary incentive for their administration work. $15.7, once upon a time when we just had 8-hour employees, the only 12-hour position on the beach was night shifts. And that in its own right was an incentive, but now that most of the shifts are already 12s, there is less incentive to work nights. People don't want to sign up for overtime on night shift. Many other law enforcement agencies have a night shift differential. So this would be saying, hey, we realize it's harder work, harder hours. It's providing a small incentive for that work.
Understand?
So 15.8, in the temporary assignment, we did cover receiving pay at the classification. So if you're upfilling for that vacancy for a long period of time, you get that acting pay. So this would say for the periods of less than your 14 days, your normal upfilling, it does provide an incentive because working as a sergeant is part of the work. So it would incentivize that upfilling and not make it as burdensome.
Understand?
15.9 would be a modification of the county's 5% rule. The county has typically said that you get 5% for changing ranks. In many cases, that has disincentivized people to take promotions. In fact, in some cases, employees have been told that they will get 5%, but they're losing their salary incentive, which was about 5%. So a promotion would bring additional duties and additional workload at no additional pay. So this would guarantee that no matter how the math works out in 15.3, you're going to get 10% increase, including any salary incentives that you would lose from taking that promotion. So overall, no matter what, the pay is going to go up minimum 10%. In many cases, 15.3 would override that and give people greater than. I think right now the average new officer going up to sergeant gets about a 15% bump just to get them to the minimum pay. But there are plenty of cases where very senior officers with plenty of experience don't get they don't get the same pay raise that a new officer would otherwise get.
I understand. All right, 1510 is a one-way, me too.
1511 is just a catch-all. I haven't foreseen every circumstance for every employee based on going with this, and this is just to say, if for some reason, I don't know what everyone's paid, if for some reason there's someone out there who's making way more than everyone else, their pay's not going to go down suddenly because of this.
You'd have a lot of explaining to do.
I would.
Either that or we can count that as a no vote on the contract.
Yeah, probably.
15, 12, yes.
16.1 is largely the same. 16.2, I think this clarification was, I don't know if it was in our contract, but I know it's in the sheriff's office contract as a clarification. It's something the county already does, but it just codifies it in the contract.
Yeah, actually, I think we could agree to 16.2 give you the same retirement as the general employee.
And then 16.3 is, I believe we mostly had this, but it has been changed with regards to non-insurance benefits. And it's just to clarify that any amendments, like if the county were to decide they wanted to eliminate the long-term risk program, we want to give a take on that.
Understand. Get seniorities new.
Seniority is new. This is actually a policy that we've gone back and forth with, and this is taking the policy almost verbatim and sticking it in the contract. But I believe other than changing the rank names, this is verbatim of the current policy proposal that we've talked to the county about.
Got it. Locations of work, I assume this is here.
Yes.
So what's this all about?
This has to do with where employees are moving and working at within the operations branch. And it lays out in 18.2 a shift bid process. The county can determine when they want to do shift bids, but it would set it up more or less how BCMS does theirs, where you bid for where you want to go and when you want to work and where you want to work. And then it's divvied up based on seniority. You list your preferences and then they go down the list. From the most senior guy to the least senior person, and go, okay, well, you're the senior guy, so you get your first pick. Down the list, well, your first and second pick have already been taken, so your third pick you can get. And in 18.3, it does allow employees to continue to bid for their current position, which in the past, the county has insisted that employees move every 2 years. We used to have this where employees could stay in the area for a longer amount of time, but in recent years, they've moved every 2 years.
So under your proposal, could they still move?
They can still move. When the shift bid comes up, if you want to bid for a new district, you don't like where you're at, and you want to go somewhere else, try something new, you can certainly do that.
No, but could the county move you?
What's that?
Could the county rotate everybody? Or does everybody get to work where they want based on their seniority?
This would be based on where they would like to work, yeah.
I get it.
18.4 just sets up the, how that procedure would work. 18.5, the county has established a procedure where someone cannot work with a brother or a spouse. They can't work in the same city as that person, regardless of whether or not one's a supervisor. We believe that, you shouldn't be in a supervisory position over a family member, but otherwise, it shouldn't be a disqualifier. It's been something that's happened in the past where people have been allowed to do this, and the county's kind of gone back and forth over the exceptions and what's allowed and what's not allowed, so.
I get it. $17, I assume, is new?
You mean 19?
I'm sorry, 19.
Yes. Entirely new. 19.1, the county more or less provides all of this already. We just wanted a little bit more formal because there have been issues where sometimes the training gets missed, things fall through the cracks. We've had employees drive around in a truck for a year and they've never been trained in what's an appropriate use of a computer in this, and there's a computer in that truck. So just about everything in 19.1 is a current class either within our division or within the county's HR training program.
Equipment. So is there anything in equipment?
This is entirely new.
Right, I figured it was new, but is there anything in here that is in addition to what you're currently getting?
20.2, we'll set up a uniform allowance system similar to what BCEMS has for theirs, with one addition, a payback of 50% of the remaining balance. We actually see this as a cost savings measure. We believe if you give someone $300 a year to spend on uniforms, they will go out and spend $300 a year on uniforms, whether or not they need the uniforms or not. However, if you provide them, you don't have to provide them the full amount. The county can enjoy the savings as well. But if you give them an incentive to save on their uniforms, hey, I'm going to take care of my shirts extra well, I'm going to make sure their shoes don't get scuffed up, so then I don't have to replace it, and I can get a little bonus to reward me for saving the county money. And then the county can also save that. That way you're not spending $300 per employee per year on uniforms.
So currently, I assume the uniforms are just issued to you?
It's issued to you, and currently you have to go to our inventory control specialist to turn in your old uniform and get a new one. If a new one's in stock, if not, you're told, tough, so sorry, come back next year. And there's a limited number that you're given, and if you want more, you have to turn in one to get one. So, a particular type of shirt you can only have 5 of. If you want 7 shirts, then you can only have 5 shirts.
So you're saying that if something happens to your uniform, you have to wait a year?
If they don't have it in stock and you're told, sorry, we've spent all of our inventory money, so you don't have it, You'll have to wait till next year. Yeah, that's happening.
$20.4, is that correct?
The main change is the AR-15 style rifle. The county has provided 21 of these. The initial agreement was one per vehicle. We quickly determined that it was not going to be feasible to issue it to the vehicle because there's the issue of storage. There's the issue of employees not taking care of the equipment if it wasn't issued to them and you're stored in it, and just being accountable for where these weapons were at all times. So as an amendment to that agreement, the county agreed to issue the same number, which at the time we had 21 vehicles to 21 rifles, and they just went down seniority on issuing those. So that was phased in over a 3-year period. We would like to phase it in the rest of the way where all law enforcement officers should receive these rifles.
All right, any other changes in this article to what you're currently getting?
20.5, weapon mounted light. I believe we're already going to this for our handguns already, just outside of bargaining. The county has already said that they're looking to providing this. But this just kind of, the whole article talks about what's issued, so we wanted to include that in there. And then 20.8 addresses some issues we've had where a computer in a vehicle may be inoperable for days at a time. Sometimes it might go all weekend, 4 or 5 days, and the officer with that vehicle does not have a working laptop to do their job. And in 2020, it's very much an essential part of an officer's toolkit to have that laptop to be able to write reports, to run names. And so we would like the county to provide maintenance for these so that any issues can be fixed in a timely manner, 24 hours preferably. And then 20.9, we had actually initially sent a impact bargaining notice early in the year regarding an HR bulletin. And I know Human Resources should mention that there were concerns about public records and capturing those records and phone use for official business on your personal phone, and we believe that would cover it. Additionally, the county is moving towards getting body-worn cameras. These can be controlled either with a separately issued device, a little mini tablet, or they can be controlled through a smartphone. This would kill 2 birds with 1 stone by providing that device in a single device. Now you've got your controller for your body-worn camera, plus you're capturing the public records for official business communication.
All right, vehicles, this is the take-home vehicle policy?
Yes.
All right. Yeah, you had said last time that you were going to be bringing this up.
Yeah. Mostly just goes into who gets along, what equipment it has, boilerplate stuff. You guys set the maintenance and the replacement schedule. And unlike most articles which would take effect upon ratification, at 2111, this does give the county the full term of this agreement to implement. We realize that you're not necessarily going to want to eat the entire cost in one budget year, so this would phase it in.
Yeah, right. body-worn cameras, I assume is a new article.
Yes, we haven't had them until now. I know they are rapidly coming with our agency, and so this would prescribe some of the policies regarding them.
Is that a typo in 22.7, where it says the county is going to create software?
No, we believe that if you want to have a random review process, that you should actually establish a random review process. Pointing your finger at a screen is not a random process, but it is a fairly trivial task for our IT department to create a script which connects to the database and says, all right, I've run a random number generator. Here are the names of the 5 videos that you're going to review. We already have this software for a random drug screening. So this would basically be taking the random drug screening concept into a random video review. So that way you can guarantee that it's actually a random process.
All right. 22. I assume this is new as well.
23?
I'm sorry, 23.
Yes. In many labor agreements, this is known as division of labor. You don't have a plumber doing a carpenter's job or a carpenter doing an electrician's job. Yet, through our mission creep, with no mission statement, we have taken on numerous jobs that really don't fit the mold of our public safety agency. You would never see a deputy fixing a stop sign at a street corner, yet we're called upon to fix the traffic signs on our beach. We're called to take away business from private industries and tow vehicles when a tow company would be glad to take that business, or unlock a vehicle when a locksmith would be glad to take that business. There are, of course, exceptions where public safety does take a place. Obviously, if you've got a baby locked in a hot car, you need to get into that. But otherwise, you locked your keys in your car, I need to focus on public safety on the beach, and you can call a locksmith. Most police agencies have that policy anyways. They will not unlock people's cars, they will not jumpstart people's cars, they will not tow people's cars.
Excellent. All right, let's see, 24.
So I mentioned 24.1 before. If it's not covered in this agreement, it's covered by merit rules, department policies, etc.
All right, 24.2, I assume is new.
24.2 is new. We know there's been plenty of talk on both sides about what to do with beach safety. Should it be under the sheriff's office? Should it be under court protection? We feel that the best model that we can provide for the beach-going public is our current model under public protection. We hope that the county agrees with that and would like to continue that.
Okay. Let's see, 25, is that new?
More or less is not new, but it is amended. It may be a new heading,
Okay.
but We had an article substantially similar. Quarterly meeting, we already have a labor relations meeting, and this does establish you can set a greater time scale. Currently, we meet monthly for employee relations meetings. This just says minimum quarterly. The director and our president have every 2 weeks, I think, have a meeting. This just says at a minimum a month. And 25.4 isn't new. It just says if you're on duty, you get paid. If not, you don't get paid for that. You can agree to invite others if needed. 25.6, I think the chief has already started doing this some. It's just to say if he's got a committee, we'd like to sit in on committees that employees are allowed to participate in. And it would be asked the director, hey, would you, or ask our president, hey, would you like on the committee? Doesn't have to listen to him, but ask for a recommendation.
All right, 26 for your contract.
Yep, standard opener, one opener for the second year, one opener for the third year.
All right. Well, I think I understand it all. Does anybody on our side have any questions regarding any of this? We're good to go? All right, well, it's going to take a little while for us to go through this. So we may have some questions as we review it, so we may be in touch in the interim just to ask for some clarifications on if we have issues costing us out. So. All right, well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Take care. Doing all right? You look tired.
Yeah. Been a rough week.
Really?
Yep.
Dare I ask?
Huh?
Dare I ask?